Hey everyone, it is Thursday night here in the United States on the East Coast. It's Wednesday night here in the United States. It's early on Thursday for those of you who are in Europe, Australia, and Asia. And we are here live for the Poker Uncensored 30. This is a new podcast from Poker Uncensored where we're going to basically hit on everything in the poker world that's hot, all of the big news, all of the hot topics. We'll hit on it. And to get started, we've got a bunch of great topics tonight. We're going to be talking about Mike Postle. We're going to be talking about Vanessa Cade, the Philonomo 250 that's coming up, corruption out of big tech, the World Series of Poker, and of course, we'll have an open Q&A at the end. The goal here is to get through everything in a half hour, make it a quick podcast, and not take up too much time because some people want to watch TV at 10:30 apparently. And just in case anybody's wondering, yes, you can indeed send your questions in. We're taking them on YouTube. We're taking them on Twitter. Use the hashtag Poker Uncensored if you want your questions to show up on the show. So plenty of opportunity to get your questions in. Remember, you can always send them in to us. So the first topic, before we get into our first topic, actually, we're going to talk about a little bit about the show, right? So again, new format for the podcast, just a half hour. We're going to try to run this more frequently. And your host, he is nicknamed His Highness Hold'em. He is the 135th best player in the great state of New Hampshire in terms of career tournament earnings. So your host, me, Matt, up here, and I'm going to kick it right off by talking about Mike Postle. Now, I'm sure everybody knows this guy who basically, the poker community branded him a cheater. They said he was a bad guy. He cheated. Well, that lawsuit never really got him convicted. He got upset about it. He filed a $330 million defamation lawsuit against many members of the poker community. It includes the people that accused him. It includes Joey Ingram. Apparently, it included me. Everybody just got sued in this thing like crazy. So he showed up in court last week, didn't have any counsel. So no lawyer, and he asked for a continuance of 120 days to try to get counsel and get him up to speed. Well, the defense clearly was not happy with that, right? They have anti-SLAPP lawsuits, which are basically saying, hey, Postle, you're trying to screw around with us and file this lawsuit to basically prevent us from engaging in public participation. And those lawsuits are getting delayed as a result. The judge, though, basically sided with Postle, didn't give him the full 120 days that he asked for, but gave him about a month of time to basically get an attorney, get things up to speed, and be able to move forward with the case. Now, you could read more about this at Poker Daily News, but I don't think Mr. Postle's case here really is going to stand a chance. Nobody just made stuff up about him, right? They looked at video, they looked at the hands that were played, and people had their opinions, and their opinion was that they believe that Mr. Postle was engaged in misconduct in those poker games. They think that Postle cheated, and they said they think he cheated. They presented evidence. I mean, Joey Ingram went through this. He had video after video after video going through this. And I just don't think Postle's defamation suit is going to stand here. And I think they need to basically wait for that to go through so the anti-SLAPP lawsuits can proceed against him. It's not a good sign when your lawyer quits the case. And that's what happened to Postle. His lawyer basically said, you know what? I'm out of this. I'm quitting the case, because his lawyer probably figured, well, one, there's not a good chance at winning. And Postle apparently is a little bit short on money. And so the lawyer's probably a little concerned he's not going to get paid off. And of course, lawyers, they need to get paid off because they got families to feed. So we got a question that's coming in here from, let's see, Mr. John apparently has a question here. So the question here from John is, how does one do a podcast with no guests and no co-hosts? Well, John, the thing is we're looking here to do the podcast and actually have anybody who wants to pop on the podcast be on the podcast. So if you're interested, reach out. We can get you on the podcast, and you can start talking about the news with us. I mean, that's how it's going to roll. We're not going to say this is only open to one person. I've got another guy sending me a message saying, hey, I got to be careful or Postle will sue me. The thing is I think I already got sued by him because he named basically something like 100 John and Jane Does, which were to be determined later, who is basically anybody that spoke anywhat negatively of him. And on this podcast, we spoke about Mr. Postle. Now, we didn't slander the guy, right? We said, hey, we think he's not going to get convicted based on the evidence that's presented, but we went through the case, and Postle has gone off and he sued the media, right? He sued like PokerNews.com. He sued people left and right. Now, the thing is that those lawsuits are never going to hold. So if Postle at some point declares, "Hey, I'm one of these Jane Does," and Postle comes in and determines he wants to have me in court, I'm going to look forward to the fun of showing up in court, defending myself against this, and probably countersuing under the anti-SLAPP statutes. So to head on to our next topic tonight, right? So a little fun one for those of you who are in the New England region, and actually really anybody who's in the Northeast United States. This is one of the top things going on. But one of the only deep stack tournament events is coming up in Manchester, New Hampshire. It's a $240 buy-in. It's got 40-minute levels and a 40K starting stack. And that is going to be taking place this Saturday. You also have a $10 dealer add-on for 10,000 chips. This is going to draw more than 100 people and more than a $20,000 prize pool. Now, because it's the only thing running in New England, right? Encore Poker is closed. MGM Springfield Poker is closed. Mohegan Sun only has cash games. Foxwoods only has cash games. Twin River closed. The Borgata, no. Again, Borgata only cash games. Harrah's in Atlantic City only cash games. New Hampshire, you've got some rooms running tournaments, right? Concord Casino, Philodomo in Manchester, Keene Casino, but then you have the folks over at the Brook and Seabrook running 0 tournaments. So they bought the biggest tournament room in the state to run 0 tournaments. So I recommend you get there early because this event is going to draw, people from all across the place. But due to the 6 max restriction, they've got limited seating. And Limp Call is asking a question of when are you going to mention confronting Scott and Joey Panic with 3 bullets? Again, if I play in Manchester, if I play this event, I'm playing the tournament. I'm not going to be worried about the little cash game that's going on the side. The tournament, the winner's going to get $6,000+ of prize money. I sit down at a 1-3 game, a 2-5 game. I'm probably not winning $6,000 in a weekend. Now you can have a good run, right? You could buy in for the maximum and you could double up and double up again and win a bunch of money, maybe win a few thousand, but it's unlikely you're going to ever win 6,000 there. But when I said I was going to, and for those who don't know, we're talking about New England local players here, Scott and Joey Panic. When I said I was going to bring 3 bullets, it's because these guys like to call light to try to suck out. We just heard a story where Panic basically called off a 4-bet with Queen Jack offsuit. He likes to call light because he thinks, hey, I call light, maybe I'll be able to suck out. Maybe I'll get lucky, I guess. And so by having multiple bullets, you're prepared for if you have that suck out happen, you can buy back in and play again. So anyway, back to the 240 plus 10. Again, if they're, I think usually they open up the registration around 11 a.m. You definitely want to be there because people are going to be lined up out the door to try to get into this thing because it is really the strongest tournament that's in the area. And the other factor here is if you look at the overall offering at Philodomo, they actually have a really good food and beverage program, plus they have sports betting. And so this weekend, as a lot of people know, we have the men's basketball tournament. And that basketball tournament is definitely going to draw a lot of interest in the sports betting aspect. I'm sure they'll have plenty of basketball games on television there. You'll be able to go place bets. They've got betting kiosks. You can place them at the window, etc. And again, if anybody has any questions, feel free to chime in with those. You can get your questions to us on YouTube. You can get them via Twitter as well. So the next topic we're going to talk about here on the list of topics is going to be a Canadian woman by the name of Vanessa Cade. Some of you have probably read about her in the news lately. So Miss Cade's Canadian poker professional. She actually won over $1.5 million in the Sunday Millions 15th anniversary special on PokerStars. Now, the Sunday Millions normally doesn't have that big of a prize up top, but because it was the 15th anniversary, they did $12.5 million of prize pool guarantee. And so Cade took this down. She is the largest winner of the Sunday Millions events in terms of dollars won. And that's, by the way, in US dollars. So when we think about how much she made in Canadian dollars, I think it's over 1.8 million Canadian dollars that she earned here. But Miss Cade here basically was able to take this down without any chop. There was no deal. In the last 11 years that they've run the Sunday Millions anniversary special, only 3 times has that happened, where you had somebody actually win this thing outright. Now, Cade's been very outspoken in standing up for women and against misogyny, and I think that's great. One of the reasons that, poker struggles is that the game, even though it's open to everybody, has a lack of female participation. It's off balance. You have roughly half the country that's female, but when you look at the typical poker room, you look at the typical, tournament field, or you look at the cash tables, you don't see that proportion in terms of the female participation. You see a lot more men playing poker, and by standing up for women, speaking out against misogyny, Cade's helping to grow the female interest in poker and helping to grow that population, and that's overall good for the game, right? If we get more people to come into play poker, it's going to be very good for the poker industry, and it's going to be very good for the players because obviously, more people playing poker means larger prize pool fields, more action going on, etc. And then we got a commentary here from Squidmodo saying 1.8 million CAs, like $9,400 US. Squid, you're a moron. So, look, yeah, the Canadian dollar fluctuates. It's not worth as much. But 1.8 million Canadian dollars is way more than 9,400, right? We're talking about, I think, 1.8 million Canadian dollars is about 1.43 million USD, right? It's not that far off. We're not talking about the the Venezuelan currency that's worthless, or the Zimbabwe dollar here, right? Canadian currency is considered to be a major currency. It trades internationally, etc. So then to speak out a little bit more on the Vanessa Cade thing, right? If you want to read more about that, you can check it out at brokefishpoker.com/news. But if anyone remembers, Dan Blazarian actually attacked Vanessa Cade back when Cade called out his joining of GG Poker. Basically, Blazarian said to Cade, right, and I quote, he said, "Shut up, ho," and said that no one knows who she is. Well, now you got tons of news stories on her. We're talking about her on the podcast. I think people are going to know who she is. When you take down a tournament and you win $1.5 million, it's a pretty good accomplishment. And actually, she's probably won more money in this month, or in the last couple of months, than Blazarian has won all year. Has Blazarian won anything huge this year? I don't know. Does anybody know? Blazarian, I don't think he's won anything big this year. So you've got Vanessa Cade making Blazarian basically look like a complete fool now, right? So he looks like a misogynist. He hasn't won as much, etc. And I think, again, it's good for poker. It's going to help to be. It's going to help the game of poker. It's going to help us see growth there. So to continue on to our next topic, and by the way, again, if you want to ask questions, you can do it, right? Just send them in YouTube, use Twitter, hashtag Poker Uncensored. That's hashtag POKER UNCENSORED, Poker Uncensored, if you want to get your questions in. So our next topic that we're going to talk about, corruption in big tech. And this is an important topic. It's something that has been called out by a lot of different people here in the United States, even abroad. Our own president of the United States had spoken about this topic. The previous president of the United States, not the current one, who, by the way, if you watched Hannity before tuning into this podcast, appears to be doing a lot of bad stuff when it comes to the border. And that's not good. Apparently we're having some serious problems down there at the southern border. But big tech's corruption is just out of control. So you have an $800 billion tech giant, Facebook, and they are now censoring the word donkey, giving people temporary bans for it. You can't speak freely anymore. So this is an animal that is commonly found on a farm, right? You go to the farm, you see a donkey. I believe in some places you can take donkey rides. They have petting zoos that have donkeys. So if you have like a little child, you can bring your child to the petting zoo and have them, come face to face with an actual donkey, right? It's an animal. And these people at Facebook have decided, well, no, you can't talk about that. It's censored. By the way, if anybody likes the movie Shrek, which is a DreamWorks film, which I think was rated G or PG. It wasn't like some R-rated or NC-17 rated, film, right? It was completely appropriate for children to watch. That DreamWorks movie had a character who was named Donkey, and that's a picture here on the right? Character is named Donkey. It's a farm animal, And Facebook is banning people for talking about it. And in the poker world, of course, we all know of a donkey as a unskilled player, somebody who makes bad plays, somebody who doesn't take into account the odds, the people who would call, say, a 4-bet with queen jack offsuit out of position. And it's ridiculous, right? So Facebook has censored, the president of the United States. They're censoring poker players who say donkey. And it seems like they will stop at nothing to try to restrict our right to free speech, to try to control the narrative. And really what they're asking for is to be regulated. And that's what's going to happen in Florida. They are looking at passing a law that any candidate for public office, if they are censored by a technology platform like Facebook, that technology platform will face a $100,000 fine every day. Now, for Facebook with $800 billion, it's going to take some time for that to add up and hurt. But if they do it to enough people, they're going to be looking at material impact to their earnings, and that's going to force them into some sort of change. There's other states that are looking at regulation too that would basically disallow that. There is a movement to look at repealing the rule called Section 230. Section 230 basically says that these platforms are not considered the publisher of content and aren't liable for it. There's look to amend that or change it so that way when these platforms engage in censorship, they will be held accountable for it. And that would help to hopefully curb some of the problems that are going on, because there is definitely, far too much censorship going on. And Facebook's not the only one. And when you try to create a platform that doesn't have any censorship, which is what Parler tried to do, there are people that come in and they try to get it shut down, right? They tried to have Parler thrown off the internet, and they were able to thankfully get back on. So hopefully Facebook will come to their senses. They'll stop censoring donkey. I would love to be able to talk about unskilled players again without having to use like ridiculous terminology, like saying, that guy made a very unskilled move that resembles what an animal on the local farm might do, because it would just be better to say, the word donkey, but Facebook doesn't want to allow it. On to our next topic. So we're going to talk about the 2021 World Series of Poker. Now, the WSOP is unlikely to run live in the typical June to July timeframe that it's historically run in. And that's something that hasn't been officially announced, but the word kind of on the street, the word behind the scenes is that they're probably not going to run it in June to July. The big rumor is they're going to switch to an October-November timeframe. And I believe that this is a good idea. And here's why. Vaccination should be way more widespread by the fall. In the United States, we're going to have pretty much everybody able to get vaccinated in May based on the target that the Biden administration has put forward. Obviously, some people don't want to get vaccinated, but as we go through the summer, there will be more vaccination. International travel will hopefully open up for people who either are vaccinated and test negative and can come into the U.S. We'll also see stuff like potentially the reopening of our border with Canada and the reopening of the border with Mexico, although apparently, again, from what Hannity was just talking about, the Mexican border is apparently wide open, and it doesn't matter if they say it's closed because people are crossing anyway. But the idea of having a full live World Series of Poker is far better than the online series that they do. First off, the online series is not really playable for everybody in the country or in the world because of the restrictions, right? You had to be in, I think, New Jersey or Nevada last year, maybe Michigan and Pennsylvania too, now in order to play. But you can't play it from a place like Massachusetts, Texas, New Hampshire, or even California. Now, with a live series, right, a lot more people will travel into Vegas. Vegas needs the business because obviously it had a lot of damage due to places being closed and restricted due to COVID. So I do think that we'll see the live event in the fall. It would be a great thing to have. I'll probably go to it because, why not? I can go out there and do a little bit of media coverage for it and maybe even play an event or two. And it should be a fun time. And I think there is a huge demand for live poker. People want to play live. The reason for the New Englanders that this tournament at Philotomo draws so many people is because there's a lack of tournaments out there, right? When you look at the Venetian and they do a guarantee of 300,000 and the prize pool is over $1 million, or you look at Seminole Hard Rock Hollywood, again, does a guarantee of, I think, 150,000, ends up with 600K in the prize pool. It's because people want to play live poker and they're going to travel to where live poker runs. The people that are playing in Las Vegas, they're not all natives of Nevada. They're people who are coming from Texas, from California, from New England, Maryland, Florida to play. People enjoy live poker. A lot of people don't like playing online. They think it's boring. They don't trust the software. They think people are cheating. And in some cases, it's true. In some cases, there are people that were cheating online. Now, not saying that everybody who plays online is doing that, but that can definitely happen. And so that's why I think we'll see a live World Series. Now, on to our next item. It's an open Q&A for the last, I think, 8 minutes or so here. So if anybody's got any questions, right, any questions at all, you can feel free to put them on YouTube. You can put them on Twitter. You can send them directly to me. If you want to be anonymous, I can keep you anonymous. I've got one from John Stevens here. He wants to know about the Q8 hand on the Stars home game. Look, John, that hand was some serious donkey play. I mean, I called with Queen 8 pre-flop. I was obviously behind. I tried to make a bluff on the flop, which clearly did not work. I got called down, and I sucked out on the guy. It was not an honorable play. Just can't really justify the Queen 8 offsuit call there. It's just hard to do. We've got, let's see, question here. Or just a point here from Brokefish. The big issue right now in online poker is RTA, real-time assistance. And, that's another factor, right? You don't have people cheating with RTA when they're sitting in an actual poker room, but when they are playing online, they do. Now, some of the poker sites have adopted technology to try to prevent RTA, and that's decent in the sense that it stops people, or it makes it harder for people to use it. But it doesn't make it that hard, because really all you have to do to use RTA in that scenario is you get a second computer and you run the RTA on a totally separate machine, or you run it in a virtual machine that's isolated from your main machine. So, they're making it harder and they're making it more expensive to cheat using RTA, but there's really no way to prevent it totally. Now we get here with Mr. Kearney here asking, do you like cash or tournament poker better? I definitely like tournament poker better. I think the challenge of tournament poker is certainly more interesting. I think that in tournament poker, there's a lot more opportunity to win money. And I think that tournament poker is the type of poker that, draws bigger. I think it draws a bigger level of entertainment when you look at it on television. The World Series of Poker is a lot more interesting to watch on TV than to watch somebody playing 2-5. Squidmoto says, if you had to have dinner with Mark Zuckerberg or Chris Polino, who would you choose and why? Well, clearly Mr. Zuckerberg, because I think that he may actually listen, whereas Polino is beyond like the level of intelligence that you need to listen. And then Brokefish says, I saw a guy using an RTA and a HUD on his tablet at Twin River a couple of years ago. I guess, using a HUD is no big deal, but the RTA stuff is pretty ridiculous. I would say that should probably not be allowed at the table to do that. We have a question from John Stevens here. He said, you mentioned playing the 250 over cash, still have a 6K top prize. How many times have you won 6K in the past? John, the top cash that I had was actually 4,900. It was down at the Borgata in Atlantic City. There is obviously the potential to potentially win 6K or more come Saturday. And if I'm able to pull off top place in that tournament, so be it. But realistically, even if, let's say, I win 2,000, right, that's a good positive return, and it makes a profit for me, and it makes a profit for any backers. And so I'd be, my goal is going to be to win, but I would be happy with that. Bergfish points out that Matt always chops before 5K so he can avoid taxes. That is an interesting factor, right? I see this happen a lot in New Hampshire. People chop it up so that they don't have to file the tax paperwork because they basically are trying to avoid paying taxes to the IRS, or they don't want, any paperwork so their ex-wives that they owe child support to know that they've got money, whatever the case might be. And it's, it's pretty common, right, to see that happen. It's just a factor that here in the United States, we say, oh, when it gets to a $5,000 winning, you got to start filling out the paperwork. Now, interestingly, at a slot machine, the threshold is much lower. It's 1,200. There is a move to try to change that. Really, I think that we should get rid of the requirement to pay any taxes on poker winnings or gaming winnings. If people are taking their post-tax money that they've gotten and using that to go play, whether it's the lottery or horse betting, sports betting, poker, a slot machine, whatever, I don't think they should have to be taxed on that. And there's other countries that use that model, right? In Canada, unless you're a professional player, you don't have to pay taxes on poker winnings. So if you're just a casual recreational player and you're using money that you earned from your job after taxes or whatever to go play, you're not being essentially doubly taxed. But if you are a professional player, that's what you do for a living, then you do pay taxes. And I think a model like that would be better in the United States. The thing is that the government and a lot of these state governments, if you look at places like New York, Massachusetts, New Jersey, these high tax states, they get greedy. They can't give up the revenue. They feel like they need that money. And in reality, what they need to do is they need to look at how do we cut spending, but they refuse to cut spending. We have a question from Kearney saying, does Matt not pay his taxes? Odo, no, I pay my taxes. In fact, I probably pay more tax than half the people in the New England poker community pay. And I I really wish I didn't have to pay so much tax. I wish we would get politicians in office who did not take these, liberal positions that they just need to tax and spend, and then when they don't have enough money, they have to go tax more. It's just ridiculous. So let's see if we've got any more questions here. I'm going to check Twitter real quick, see if we've got anything else. I've got one here from Richard. He wants to know about a lawsuit, and it's not the one we talked about earlier, but Richard wants to know, is there any new news on the Puck lawsuit? So as those of you who are in New England probably know, there was a lawsuit that got filed for, I think, $170 million or so against people that was filed by Mr. D'Andrio here, aka Puck. I believe that those are all still pending in court. They're waiting for tons of paperwork to be filed and depositions and discovery, and then it'll all go before a judge, and hopefully justice is going to be served here. I think that there was definitely some wrongdoing. I think that he deserves compensation for what was done to him, and I think that the poker community has suffered because of the forced closure of the Cheers Poker Room and Casino. We got a question here that asks, how much wood would a woodchuck chuck of a woodchuck could chuck wood? Well, I believe the answer here is as much wood as a woodchuck would chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood. Then we've got a question here asking, are more taxes good? Well, the obvious answer here is no. We don't want more taxes, right? We want less tax. We want to curb the taxation. We want to curb the regulation, and we want to let people prosper. One of the things that prevents people from having prosperity here in the United States is that we overtax them. When someone is successful, we punish them. We punish success with tax, and we got to make an end to that. So then we've got accusations by Limp Call that we are not taking their questions. I mean, we've taken plenty of questions. I don't know. I don't get it. We've taken plenty of questions here. We got lots of them. We have accusations that we're not taking questions. I mean, people give us good questions, we'll take them. If you're going to give trolling questions, we're not going to take trolling questions, right? Because trolling questions are bad. So Kearney says more tax equals bad, more rake equals good. I think I got it now. Well, no, more rake is not necessarily good. However, in the sense where a limited amount of space is available at a poker table or in a poker room, it could make sense to charge more rake. And the reason for that is simply supply and demand. If you have 60 seats for poker and you have 150 people that want to play, what you do is you charge more for those seats, effectively higher rake. And some of the people that are, lined up waiting to play are going to say, oh, the rake's too high, I'm going to not play. And so then the people that are willing to pay more to play will be able to actually get a seat. The room is going to make more revenue, right? Now, in the opposite scenario, if you have, let's say, 100 seats and you're only filling 40 of them, well, maybe you want a lower rake to draw people in. And that's why I think that the flat model of rake is just terrible. It should be dynamic. You should look at more rake when you have more people wanting to play, you should have more rake. And that way you balance out everything. You get a good balance. You have supply and demand at equilibrium. So we're going to wrap it up in a minute because we're trying to keep this to about a 30-minute. If anybody's got any final questions, feel free to hit us on Twitter. You can hit us again through the YouTube. You can hit us on Facebook Messenger as well. Looks like we have one more question. This question is about the Wire Act decision. So the question is from Roger, and he asks, "What's with the Wire Act?" So Roger's question here about the Wire Act. So the news that came out recently was that the Wire Act, which had been basically deemed to not apply to, I think, online poker or online gaming or whatever, lotteries, etc. The Wire Act was deemed to not apply, and that was by a federal appeals court. I believe the First Circuit did that. The Biden administration appears to not plan to actually appeal this to the Supreme Court, and that basically means that the First Circuit's ruling is going to stand, and that having online poker is going to online poker, whatever, interstate online poker is going to be legal, and that's definitely a good thing. So then, let's see. We get a question here from Mr. Stevens asking, or Limp Call asking about, do I get paid to tweet about The Bachelor and Chris Panini or whatever all day? No, I don't get paid to tweet about The Bachelor. However, I may be applying to go on the show to find love, so you may see me on television in the fall, which would be interesting. All right, so thanks everybody for joining the podcast. Thank you for sending in your questions. Unless you were trolling, then you can go screw yourself. But we're gonna have a fun time here, and we're gonna try to do this again, hopefully next week or the week after. So everybody have a good night, and good luck at the tables.